Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know why they say the British are unemotional. I found that quite appealing. Thank you. You're very kind. You're very gracious. It is such an honor to be with you here today. I have a lot I want to say to you. I'm going to try and say it quickly, but I first want to say I'm so gratified and appreciative of the introduction I just received by Ed Miliband. I will have several things to say about him later on because I have such great respect for him and such faith in him. But, you know, you heard yesterday, what a clear direction looks like. You heard yesterday what a progressive message, a progressive vision is. And that's what we have to demand of our leaders. Give us something we can actually see and touch and believe in. And Ed Miliband has done that consistently. He did it yesterday. Let's thank him for his leadership. I, by definition, as a progressive, as a citizen of the world, there's few things that could be a greater honor than speaking before the Labor Party conference because of the role this party has played over decades and decades as a beacon for progressives internationally. It's a tremendous honor to be here, but I also think it's important to be fraternal and honest and straightforward with you. The one thing I found to be a problem is I'm looking at all the logos and the posters. Someone misspelled the word labor and added a U. Ed, I think you really need to find out who was in charge of graphics, and there should be some kind of sanction for them, I believe. But what I can tell about this party is it's a party on the rise. It's a party with extraordinary leaders. It's a party with activists, true activists, grassroots activists. And I'm someone who believes that social change foundationally comes from the grassroots. It's the only sustainable way to achieve change. But it does, at the same time, require a new generation of leaders. You have that balance point. You have that moment where everything's come together. You have an extraordinary generation of leaders and an extraordinary rank of activists. People who really understand that in the final analysis, politics comes down to knocking on doors and talking to your coworkers and talking to your neighbors and convincing them of the urgency of change. I see these pieces coming together in this Labor Party at this moment. I can feel in this room what you are capable of, and I'm confident that this is going to be the last conference before a great victory in 2015. It's a particular honor to be in Manchester because of Manchester's role in global history. The city was the forefront of, you can clap for Manchester, yes indeed. One of the foundational sites of the Industrial Revolution, but for me, even more important, one of the places where the working class developed, the consciousness of the working class developed, the movement of working people developed, working people demanding their rights, creating self-determination. So much of that history that we build on today started here in Manchester. So it's very fitting to be here again. Like the city I love and that I lead, there's been a reality in Manchester over years that if you worked hard and you had grit and determination, you could get somewhere. And that is what we're trying to restore in our respective societies. That notion of fairness, that valuing of work. Manchester epitomizes that, and therefore your presence here today amplifies the power of your message. Now, remember this party this very noble party, was born out of the efforts of working people simply to get the right to vote. And then it grew as it became a voice for the larger economic needs of working people. And those origins are powerful. They undergird your success now and the successes to come, because this is a party by its very name, by its very history, that stands with working people. It's not gray, it's not ill-defined. It's obvious whose side the Labor Party is on, and that is so important as you move forward. And I'm going to speak about, thank you. I'm going to speak about my experience in New York. I think there are some real commonalities. But knowing who you are, being authentic, being consistent, there are few things in the political process that matter more than that. And this party has that in its favor. And it's in your DNA. Progressiveness is in your DNA as a party. Inclusiveness, the idea that everyone matters, the idea that no one should be left behind. Those thoughts are synonymous with this party. And that's what people are looking for today in both our societies. Because so many people have felt left behind, so many people have felt left out across spectrums geographically in terms of income and profession. It doesn't matter. So many people have felt that their needs are not being met. But this Labor Party has the legitimacy, the historic legitimacy, to speak to those challenges and to show people a pathway forward. The leaders of this party, led by Ed Miliband, are very clear that they're not only going to offer ideas, they will offer bold ideas, forceful ideas for change, uncompromising ideas. And the public is hungry for something they can see and touch and feel as the gateway to the changes they need. The program put forward yesterday, in my view, does that so effectively. It speaks to people's real lives. It will touch them in their hearts because it's true and authentic and consistent. This Labor Party also listens. You hear the voices of millions in your nation who feel they're treading water, who feel they're stuck in an increasingly economically stratified society that doesn't give them opportunity. You're hearing that by your actions, by your vision. You're literally responding to something people have wanted an answer for years. You know from all that you've heard in the communities you come from, people are working harder and harder, but they feel they're still falling behind. They don't sense that their hard work is being rewarded, and they need to sense it again. They need to sense it so this nation can move forward. Your party refuses to accept the politics of inertia. You refuse to allow in the notion that we're somehow stuck and we can't move forward. There's a mindset that says we should just accept a set of realities and accept the notion that the next generation won't do as well as the previous. The Labor Party doesn't accept that conventional wisdom. The Labor Party, by its program, is going to fight against that wisdom and create a new reality where opportunity exists again across the board. That's what every society needs. And you know how important it is to show that there is a pathway for our children to do better than we have done. It's really a moral obligation that we maintain not just that idea, but that reality. That's how we live up to the promise that we make to the people we serve. Yes, we're trying to address their needs today, but underneath that is that foundational notion that there is a pathway to tomorrow, a better pathway for our children. I feel this as a public servant. One of my responsibilities is to ensure the well-being of over 1 million school children in the New York City public schools. That's a responsibility I feel deeply. I have to make sure that they are being offered a positive path forward. But I say it even more profoundly as a father of two wonderful children, two beautiful children, Chiara and Dante, who are the lights of my life. And I feel through them what so many people feel in families all over this nation, all over my nation, that deep urge to ensure that the next generation will do better. The role I play as a father is the most important one to me. There's no duty more sacred than that of parenthood. And we need to show in all we do that we're going to help our children be whatever they hope to be, whoever they hope to be, that we are committed to building that pathway. When we do that, we communicate the notion that work matters. We communicate the notion that effort and ideas and creativity and ingenuity will be rewarded, and that's why we keep going and that's why we keep building. But when that idea doesn't exist in our society, we literally break the tradition of a civilized society. We break that notion that we're going to live up to our obligations to the next generation. I've talked a lot about the inequality crisis. I've said that for New York City, I think it's the issue of our time. I think it's the issue of our time throughout the globe because it really begs the question, are we going to have a sustainable society economically? And the numbers in New York City are powerful, but the numbers here in the UK are at least as striking and sobering. In 2011 in this nation, the average income of an adult in the top 0.1% of income was more than 70 times that of someone in the bottom 90%. That's an unacceptable level of stratification. And it's a counterproductive level of stratification. We can't move forward with that status quo. Let me offer you another fact, even more striking. The Guardian recently reported that the 5 richest families in the UK have more wealth than the entire bottom 20% of this nation. Again, a state of affairs that can't continue, or we risk a strong and stable society. And the trend has been moving in the wrong direction. One thing I try to do with the people of New York City is level with them at all times. If something's not working, we have to be clear about it. We have to be straightforward and blunt about it. New Yorkers are known for their strong opinions. They demand nothing less than bluntness. Well, we know income inequality has been moving in the wrong direction in our city. And a study of this nation published by Oxfam indicates that since the 1990s, incomes of the top 0.1% again, the top 0.1% of Britons, have grown 4 times faster than those of the bottom 90%. The people understand this. They see it, they feel it, they experience it. They know it's not healthy, they know it's not fair, they know it's not right. And the Labour Party is now the voice that speaks to this crisis and offers the solution. Now, I'll hasten to add, there's nothing wrong with attaining wealth. I'm happy to celebrate the success of those who have done well. But we have to ensure that more and more people get to write their own success stories. That's the notion, that success has to be a continuity where more and more are involved. The status quo of an ever-stratifying society essentially offers a very narrow path to success. It's not a believable equation. And what it says to everyday working people is they'll be left behind and they'll be stuck in a cost of living crisis. Now, that notion, cost of living crisis, we talk about it, we think about it each in our own cities and countries, we feel it deeply. But let's clarify, let's be very specific about what it means. The cost of living crisis does not refer to the outrageously high prices for a Bentley or a penthouse flat or a 5-star holiday. The people who can afford those luxuries are, in fact, doing quite well under this conservative government. They are not experiencing a cost of living crisis. But what the vast majority of people are thinking about and struggling over, feeding a family, keeping a modest home that's lit and heated, securing a safe place for their youngest children while parents are hard at work, well, these things are becoming more and more costly. And we're not talking, obviously, about luxuries. We're not even talking about conveniences. We're talking about essential things, essentials that people need to live. And in this moment, living is getting harder and harder for working families. Not living well, just living, just getting by, is getting harder. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about the economic realities, not just talking about the prices people pay for goods. You can tell the toll is greater. You can see it in the tired eyes of the waitress whose second job is preceded by a second shift at her first job. That's the reality that so many people are living. You can see it in the shaky hand of a bus driver signing the paperwork for a payday loan because he feels he has no other choice. You can see it in the clenched jaws and stiff lips of working parents mustering brave faces in front of their son and daughter. You can see it in the strain that goes with just hiding the fear that they won't be able to attain a better life. The cost is very human. It's very emotional. It's very personal. And as wealth becomes more and more concentrated at the top, stories like these become all too common. And if it isn't addressed, this crisis becomes the defining characteristic of our society. The defining characteristic should be opportunity or prosperity. But if we don't address this crisis, we will be defined by inequality. We'll be defined by the cost of living crisis. The Labor Party understands this. You understand what's at stake. And I say in solidarity with you that that understanding isn't simple or easy to take in. There's a weight that comes with it. You, I believe, know the weight of this moment. It can feel like a burden, the exasperation that comes from knowing the gravity of the threat we face, knowing there's a generation at risk of being forsaken. And it's a time when it seems that so many of our institutions are unwilling to respond. You're on the right side of history, but the right side of history can feel like a lonely place. But I assure you it's not truly a lonely place. It never has been. Rather, history itself shows us again and again that people gravitate towards decency, towards inclusion, towards progress. And you don't have to look back to history books and stories from centuries ago. Just go walk around the streets of Manchester today. Go to a school, go to a church, go to a mosque. You can see the trust that people, everyday people, put in one another each day, the value people place in simple moral action in their lives. So we see it, but then it's harder to conceptualize how we achieve collective moral action. That seems so much more difficult. Well, when it comes to these challenges we face, the inequality crisis, the cost of living crisis, part of what makes it so daunting to us and our feelings is because of the sheer scope of it. It feels so deeply embedded. It feels, to many good people, like perhaps it's reached a point where nothing more can be done. And people see over and over again that some people, a small group of people, small in number but oversized in power, people who benefit from the status quo, people who work hard to maintain it, well, their voices seem louder than the voices of all the rest of us. Their voices seem more confident and authoritative, and those of everyday people get drowned out. So we see the magnitude of the crisis, we see the unfairness of the dialogue, and sometimes it's easy to lose some spirit. People are made to feel powerless every single day in our societies. They're made to feel that their voice doesn't matter. So we see with our eyes that inequality is skyrocketing. Cost of living is overwhelming. People can see it. They can feel it. But the message we receive from so much of the discourse is you're not supposed to talk about it. It's unconstructive to talk about out loud. It's divisive. Something that was thrown at me time and time again. It was divisive to say New York City was living a tale of two cities. It was going to be harmful in some way. Well, you know that's not true. The people of your country know that's not true. They know your obligation is to speak out loud about these truths so we can change them, so we can address them. We can't be silent. And part of your job as activists, as leaders of this great party, is to help Britons find their voice, to help them recognize their power to change this equation, that they do deserve something better than this. And we have to talk about it. Activists in this room know that sometimes people, good people, hardworking people, aren't comfortable speaking certain truths until they hear others acknowledge them. Sometimes the very act of saying this is an untenable state of affairs opens up the willingness of people to call it what it is and act from there. And we know that an unproductive status quo, an unfair status quo, gets perpetuated through a series of falsehoods, false choices that assign mutual exclusivity to ideas that should be complementary. We're told, for example, that prosperity can't be both great and shared, that you can't lift the floor for those struggling in a tough economy and still balance a budget, that those of us who serve the people can't expect to achieve anything at all if we dare to advance policies that are bold and morally right. These are the conventional wisdoms. Well, I laid out for you three conventional wisdoms. All three are wrong. We should reject all three. We should show that they're wrong. And I want to offer my own example as part of the proof in the lead up to the election for New York City mayor last year. The voices of the status quo also offered a false choice. They gave voters a very clear false choice. They said voters could support my candidacy or vote for someone who actually had a chance of winning. You heard it over and over again. Well, I'm here before you today because the people of New York City rejected the lazy logic of false choice politics. I'll tell you a little bit about it. I announced my candidacy for mayor from the front steps of my home in Brooklyn, January 2013. A few hundred people were there. They were the earliest believers in our campaign. We were brought together because we recognized that we were living a tale of two cities. We recognized that a few were doing very well and millions of working people were struggling. And it was undermining our city. It was undermining our whole being as a city, what we stood for, what we believed in, what we valued. We had been a beacon of opportunity for generations. People all over our city felt that sense of real, tangible opportunity. We had been a beacon to the world, and that beacon was visibly dimming. We saw it and we felt it. We saw it in our neighbors' faces. We saw the worry that people felt with a sense of diminished possibilities. And we knew the politics of the status quo were exacerbating the problem rather than addressing it. So there was a sense of a challenge, a somber responsibility, but the day I announced my candidacy, that January day, our mood wasn't somber at all. It was a gray, frigid afternoon, but the event had an aura of excitement and joy that one would associate with a summer block party. Must have been a little strange for people walking by. wondering why all these people were congregated on a cold January day, enjoying each other's company with such passion and energy. Well, there was a feeling that something special was happening, and it made the chill more tolerable. It came from having found one another, from acknowledging to each other that we were living a tale of two cities and we weren't going to stand for it. And there was a sense of relief that came from learning we weren't alone in our beliefs, a lifting of lonely burdens when people found that they shared values and were ready to act on them, a sense of mission. And with that sense of mission, a sense that victory was attainable. Didn't matter what the conventional wisdom said. We knew. We knew the logic was there. We knew we were speaking to people's needs. We knew our views were authentic. We knew people felt it. We knew they were ready for change. Therefore, we knew victory was attainable. We kept being told victory was not attainable, but we knew it in our hearts. Does this remind you of a country you've heard of? Anybody? Anybody? Now, the odds did honestly appear long at first. It felt like the total number of people in New York City who had even heard of me were, in fact, that couple of hundred people gathered in front of my house, and my house is not very big. We had gone through 20 years of Republican rule in our city. And again, the conventional wisdom said that that was a dominant reality that could in many ways continue for the long term. There were other candidates for mayor. They were better known. They also espoused ideas that were seen as more politically practical, closer to the status quo. But it was never my intention to nibble around the edges of timid maintenance. I ran to take dead aim at the crisis of our time. And I became mayor of our great city because everyday New Yorkers were hungry for a break from a status quo that wasn't working for them. They were hungry for that change, and they were ready to do something about it. Our campaign was powered by people of every background, every race, every religion, every age, even every income bracket. Because, yes, even many New Yorkers who had attained real success joined our fight against rising inequality. They recognized that an ever more stratified society wasn't morally right, and it wasn't in their interest either. They wanted the next generation of New Yorkers to have some of the same opportunities they had had. So we were a small group, but we believed in something. And our campaign grew, and it grew some more, and it grew some more. And we worked together as activists do when you really want to bring a message to the people, when you really want to knock on that door, you want to go to that street fair or that block party, you want to engage people. And we did, and we went to living rooms and parks. We got on Twitter and Facebook. People were hearing things that they wanted said out loud, that they wanted to see a reflection of their own lives in the vision, and they were learning that they had the power to do something about it. So that's how, in a matter of months, we went from a few hundred people gathered on a blustery Brooklyn day to not just winning an election, but winning it big. The conventional wisdom couldn't have been more wrong. The conventional wisdom left out what the people were feeling. And we determined to take that same spirit into government. We believed it was pretty straightforward. What we had said in our campaign had to continue. There had to be a constant push for bold action, a willingness to hear and speak hard truths, and an agenda set by actually listening to the people we serve. I said from the beginning I had number one priority. I was going to do everything I could to make sure that our youngest people, our 4-year-olds, would get access to full-day, high-quality pre-kindergarten, universally, for all. I said no matter what we experienced, we were going to get there. And we did it because we had all the evidence in the world what early childhood education does for a child. We also knew in this moment in history, education determines economic destiny like never before. And we had to do something about it. And as with most matters of destiny, timing's everything. If we don't reach our young people early and well, and with enough hours, we're damning them to not have the future they should have. If we give them the hours they need to prepare, the sky's the limit. And I'm so proud of Ed and the whole team of this party for putting early childhood education front and center in your platform. You know, we have a very lively media, news media in New York City, pride themselves on accuracy. So I said my #1 goal is universal pre-K, full day, high quality pre-K for every child. Here's two assessments that I think are telling. In September 2013, a few months before I was elected mayor, the New York Daily News wrote, quote, "The promise to create 48,000 educational slots for 4-year-olds has little chance of becoming a reality." Then, exactly a year later, September 2014, the New York Times wrote, quote, 51,000 children answered de Blasio's bell for pre-K. Now, you're a very perceptive audience, so you'll note that it was 51,000 as opposed to the previous quote was 48,000. What that says is that we actually had 3,000 more children attending pre-K than was said to be impossible the year before. And 51,000 beautiful children on a better path to success. 51,000 children who define our future, getting what they need. People of our city saw that commitment was kept, and it was for all of them. It was for every kind of New Yorker. And we recognized that we had to continue urgently to show people solutions that would reach across the board, that would answer the crisis of our time. So we've launched a plan to secure affordable housing for 500,000 New Yorkers over the next decade. That's more than the total population of Bristol. I wanted to show you I had my local color. Or, if you want an American example, Miami. We wanted to address inequality in all its manifestations. One of the saddest ones in our city was the fact that we had racially biased police practices. And it was sending a horrible message to law-abiding New Yorkers, particularly young men of color. And we've changed those policies so we can bring police and community together so that a young person, a law-abiding young person, can walk down the street without being hassled by the authorities, so they can feel invested in their society. And we did all this while reaching a historic agreement with our teachers. Educators who had gone for half a decade without a contract, the good men and women charged with safeguarding and promoting the futures of our children, had very little in the way of security for their own futures. We created, out of mutual respect, out of a sense of partnership, a bargain that said teachers would be treated with respect, they'd get better pay, they'd get better training, and they'd also find with us some of the savings we needed to make the plan sustainable. There was partnership. There was respect for labor. It was a good deal for labor. It was a good deal for the people of New York City. And that's how we move forward together. So if anyone tells you that a balanced budget and an agenda of economic fairness can't go hand in hand, tell them to come visit New York City. Really, you should visit. It's beautiful this time of year. There's so many similarities between the UK today and the New York on that day when I announced my candidacy. And we have a physical distance between us, but we have tremendous bonds. And I can see so clearly that the people of the UK are ready for bold, progressive change. The time is now. And if the question is venue, if you saw my humble house in Brooklyn and a couple hundred people on the street versus this great hall and all of you, you're going to feel very confident of your chances of victory next year. But part of the pathway to victory is ignoring the glib assertions that a progressive agenda is somehow narrow. I know the conservatives like to throw that out. An agenda that improves people's lives across the board is fundamentally universal. An agenda that recognizes that the status quo is not serving the majority is fundamentally just and fair and needed. And I would argue that the consistency of your agenda will be your calling card. The plan outlined yesterday is unmistakably clear and authentic and consistent. It should be proudly promoted as such. I know that some would say people, voters, are governed by fear, are governed by their sense of discomfort of their lives. I don't think people are governed by fear when they see a real solution. When you give them something bold, when you give them something consistent, when you show it's authentically who you are, hope triumphs over fear. But you have to give them that venue. Now, one thing that will benefit you, and I'm sorry to say this is the case, but it's true, one thing that will benefit you in the months ahead is that you're exemplifying what people are experiencing. You're offering tangible and meaningful solutions. And those in the government of your nation right now, the conservatives, will not provide a powerful counterpoint. Don't hold your breath waiting for them to address the cost of living crisis, because they won't. So people will see your willingness to take action versus their inaction, versus their top-down policies. And those policies aggravate the wounds of the people. I would argue the most painful might be the conservatives' tax policy. Instead of giving working families the leg up they deserve, guess what? They give huge tax cuts to the wealthiest in the vague hope that the money would magically trickle down to everyone else. We are familiar with this approach in our country. It's called in our country typically voodoo economics. I have no doubt that the word voodoo sounds much more elegant in a British accent than an American one. But either accent, any way you say it, we know the policy doesn't work. And we know what does work, and Ed Miliband laid it out clearly and squarely yesterday. And he made clear it's a historic moment when bold action can and will make the difference. You know, I think one of the things that Ed has said that's powerful to me, it's not about a different program, it's something bigger. It's something more essential. The notion of building one nation. It's a notion that is true to the values of this place, true to people's hopes, true to all the things that they want to believe in, and when they see policies that make it impossible to have one nation, it grinds against them, it makes them less willing to engage. But when the Labor Party comes forward and shows an actual pathway, it changes the discussion profoundly. Ed Miliband will be a prime minister for Britons with second jobs, not just those with second homes. And Ed's plan, his vision, it's not political talk. It's substantive. It's real. It's a real plan that gets at the crux of this economy. Labor's plan for tax policy rewards hard work over existing wealth and power. to plan to end the current government's tax cut for the wealthiest and instead give tax relief to 24 million middle and working class people. I can't think of anything stronger and more appropriate. And again, if you believe that the people will make sense of a complicated world through their own material reality, through their own families and their needs, what could be more compelling, what could be more vital and important than Ed's plan that protects and strengthens, doesn't curtail, protects and strengthens the NHS so that quality health care remains a right and not a privilege in this nation. He has a plan that puts working people ahead of big corporations by controlling energy costs and taking unprecedented steps to make housing more affordable. And something very dear to my heart, a plan that significantly increases to 25 hours a week free childcare to working parents of 3- and 4-year-old children so all kids can get on a path to success and opportunity early. Ed, your agenda is a blueprint of what a fairer, more prosperous, stronger United Kingdom will look like. And that, my friends, is not only why you must win, that is why you will win. The choice is clear. Your plan rewards hard work and ensures that the next generation can do better. Or the alternative is the status quo of ever-widening income gaps, of an ever-deepening cost of living crisis. It's a status quo that people will not accept. The choice is clear. It's clear to everyone in this room, and through your efforts, it will be clear to every citizen of your country. And I argue, take this fight to every corner of this nation, because you have the winning hand. You have right on your side. You have the plan. You have the vision. The other side will somehow argue that things work better when opportunity is scarce and exclusive. They'll somehow try to argue that. I note with some irony that they run into a little historical problem on this point. One could call their viewpoint Darwinist, but I would note that not even Darwin was a social Darwinist. Indeed, Charles Darwin, one of the greatest minds of yours or any other country, he put it this way. He said, "If the misery of the poor be caused not by the laws of nature but by our institutions, great is our sin." Sorry to tell the I'm sorry to tell the conservatives that Charles Darwin would not approve of them. So we have to reject the false choices. That's so much of what we need to do every day in educating people, energizing them, mobilizing them. And whenever you hear that false choice that says we can only move forward if some are left behind, well, tell people you don't accept that. You won't accept that. No one should accept that. The work ahead will be anything but easy. I can assure you of that. My own path is evidence. It will never be easy. Look at the backdrop. We have distinct histories of our two nations written on opposite sides of an ocean, but they leave us at this moment facing essentially the same exact crisis. And that underscores just what we're up against, just the immense scale of the problem. But you still have the power to overcome it. You still have the ability to show people that they don't have to accept this. If you reject the cold complacency of the status quo's power will erode. If you speak hard truths, people will listen. If you empower the people of your great country to speak their truths, to stand up and to act, in the face of this crisis, then there is so much good that you can achieve together. And I believe you will. Thank you.